I remember that day clearly. The air smelled of cinnamon and coffee, the way it always did when I spent the morning cooking. The kitchen was warm, and the light coming through the window made the dust look like tiny stars floating around me. I had been up since dawn, filling the fridge with food, casseroles, pies, salads, everything I could think of that my daughter and her husband liked. I wanted them to come home to something good, something that smelled like love. You see, when you get old, you don't have many ways left to show love. Your hands shake, your knees ache, your words come out too soft to be heard. So, you cook, you fold laundry, you fix things nobody notices, you fill the fridge so they don't have to. That morning, my daughter was rushing around getting ready for her husband's family visit. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the tightness in her smile. She wanted everything to be perfect. I didn't mind helping. I was happy to be there. I was arranging some fruit on a plate when I heard her voice, sharp, cold, cutting through the air like a knife. "Don't touch that food, Mom. My husband's family is coming." I froze. For a moment, I thought she was joking. I even smiled a little, waiting for her to laugh. But she didn't. She was serious. Her eyes were hard, and her tone carried something I hadn't heard from her in years: shame. She didn't want me to touch the food, the same food I had spent the morning preparing, the same fridge I had filled. She didn't want her husband's family to see that her old mother had cooked. I looked at her and nodded slowly, pretending not to care. "Oh, of course, honey," I said. "I just wanted to make sure everything looked nice." But inside, something cracked. It's strange how silence can hurt more than shouting. I didn't say a word after that. I just went to my room, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at my hands. These hands had fed her, held her, wiped her tears when she was little. And now they were not good enough to touch her food. I could hear laughter from the kitchen. Her in-laws had arrived. Everyone seemed so cheerful. I sat quietly, my back straight, my eyes fixed on the curtain that moved with the wind. I thought about getting up, walking out there, smiling through it all like mothers do. But I couldn't. Something inside me felt heavy. You know, I never expected much from life. Just respect, just a little kindness. But when your own child looks at you with embarrassment instead of love, that's when you realize age doesn't just make your body weak, it weakens your place in their world too. That evening, she came to my door, all smiles. "Mom, they love the food. Thank you for helping earlier," she said lightly, as if those words from before had vanished into the air. I smiled back, because that's what mothers do. We smile even when we're bleeding inside. But when she left, I whispered to myself, "It's okay. Maybe I should stop coming here so often." I didn't mean it then, but deep down, I knew that moment had changed something forever. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her voice echoing in my head, "Don't touch that food. My husband's family is coming." And I realized sometimes love doesn't end in one big fight. It ends quietly in moments like that, when the people you love most forget how much you've given. I woke up before sunrise the next morning. The house was still, the kind of stillness that feels almost heavy. The laughter from last night had faded into memories, leaving only the soft hum of the refrigerator, the same one I had filled, though it no longer felt like mine to touch. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching my shawl around my shoulders. My hands were cold, but it wasn't the weather. It was the kind of cold that comes from inside when something in your heart has cracked open and started to freeze. I could hear them moving around, my daughter and her husband getting ready for the day. Their voices floated through the walls, light and cheerful, as if nothing had happened. But something had happened, something that couldn't be undone with a smile or a thank you. As I sat there, I looked around the room, the little corner they called Mom's room. There were a few framed photos, most of them of her as a child. One of her smiling at her graduation, one from her wedding day. In each photo, I stood somewhere in the background, a little older, a little quieter. That's how it always was. I was there, but never the center, always the background. I got up slowly and opened the drawer beside the bed. Inside was a small envelope with a few bills, the money I'd been saving for her birthday gift. I had planned to surprise her with something small but meaningful. Now it didn't feel right anymore. Instead, I took out a small piece of paper and began to write. My dear, I'm going to visit an old friend for a while. Don't worry about me. Take care of yourself and your home. With love, Mom. I folded it carefully and placed it on the nightstand. There were no tears. I think I had cried too many over the years, when her father passed away, when she moved out, when she stopped calling as often. You run out of tears eventually. What's left is just quiet acceptance. I packed slowly, not because I had much to take, but because every little thing felt like a goodbye. My sweater, my old book of recipes, the framed photo of her as a baby. I hesitated before slipping it into my bag. As I zipped it closed, I heard her call from the kitchen. Mom, breakfast's ready. Her voice was cheerful again, like nothing had ever happened. Maybe she truly didn't remember the words that shattered me the day before. Or maybe she thought I'd already forgiven her. Mothers always do, right? I walked out and smiled, the same practiced smile that had carried me through so many hurts. Good morning, dear, I said softly. She handed me a plate, but I noticed the way her eyes darted to the food, making sure I didn't touch what wasn't meant for me. It was just a flicker, a tiny thing, but it told me everything. I ate quietly. Every bite felt like sand. When I finished, I stood up, walked over to her, and placed my hand gently on her shoulder. Sweetheart, I said softly, thank you for letting me stay. I think I'll go visit Mrs. Harris today. She's been unwell. She smiled without really looking at me. Oh, sure, Mom. That's nice. Do you need me to drop you off? I shook my head. No, I'll manage. And that was it. No hug, no hesitation, just a casual goodbye, like a guest leaving after breakfast. I stepped outside, the cold morning air brushing against my face. The world looked the same blue sky, same gentle wind, but inside, something had ended. I walked slowly down the street, the sound of birds mixing with the ache in my chest. Every step felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because I was free from the pain of pretending. Heavier because I knew she wouldn't come after me. When I reached the corner, I turned around one last time. Her house, once my home, looked peaceful, almost beautiful in the morning light. And I whispered to myself, I hope she never feels what I'm feeling right now. Then I walked away. That was the last morning I ever spent in that house. The bus ride was quiet. I sat by the window, watching the world move past. Trees, children running with backpacks, couples holding hands. Everyone seemed to be going somewhere, carrying a sense of belonging. I held my small bag close. Inside were only a few things. My old sweater, a book of recipes, and that one picture of my daughter as a little girl, smiling, holding my hand, her eyes full of trust. I don't know when that trust faded. Maybe it didn't fade all at once. Maybe it just wore down, like paint peeling slowly from a wall. After an hour, the bus stopped near a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town. That's where my old friend Margaret Harris lived. We'd known each other since high school. Two girls who dreamed of seeing the world, who ended up raising families instead. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, her eyes went wide. Good heavens, Mary, she gasped, pulling me into a hug. What on earth are you doing here? I smiled faintly. I thought I'd visit for a few days, if that's all right. She didn't ask questions. Real friends never do. She simply said, You'll stay as long as you want. I've got plenty of tea and stories. Inside her little house, everything smelled of comfort. Old books, lavender, and freshly baked bread. It reminded me of how home used to feel. As we sat together by the window, sipping tea, she watched me quietly for a while. Then she said softly, You've lost weight, Mary, and your eyes, they look tired. I smiled, but it trembled. I suppose I am tired, Margaret. Just tired of being somewhere I no longer belong. Her face softened. Is it your daughter? I didn't answer right away. The steam from the tea blurred my vision, and for a moment I pretended it was just the heat, not tears. She's a good girl, I finally said. Always has been. Just life changes people, I guess. She's got her husband, her fancy friends. She's built her own world, and I don't fit in it anymore. Margaret sighed. Children forget sometimes, not out of hate, but out of comfort. They start to believe we'll always be there, no matter how far they push us. I nodded slowly. Her words sank deep, because that was exactly what had happened. You know, I spent years trying to make her life easier. After her father passed, it was just the two of us. I worked double shifts at the diner, came home to make sure she had warm meals, helped her with homework even when my eyes could barely stay open. I remember one night, she was about 15, I came home late, exhausted. She'd fallen asleep at the table waiting for me. There was a note in her hand. Mom, I'll make you proud someday. And she did. She went to college, got a job, married a good man. She made it out of the small town. She built a life. I just never realized that in building that life, she might build it without me. Margaret reached out, touching my hand gently. You gave her everything, Mary. That's what mothers do. But sometimes when we give too much, we disappear in the process. Her words stayed with me long after the tea was gone. That night, she let me sleep in the guest room. It was small but warm. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the ticking clock. Each tick felt like a heartbeat, slow, steady, patient. And as I drifted toward sleep, I thought about how quiet my life had become. No phone calls, no laughter from the next room, just the echo of memories, birthdays, school plays, her little hand clutching mine. Before closing my eyes, I whispered, I hope she's happy. That's all I ever wanted. But a small voice inside me asked, What about your happiness, Mary? I had no answer, because after a lifetime of giving, I wasn't sure I even knew what that word meant anymore. I woke up to the sound of rain tapping softly on the window. Margaret was already in the kitchen, humming an old hymn. I could smell coffee and buttered toast. But I stayed in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling. Rain has a way of opening doors you thought were closed. Memories you thought you'd buried start walking back in, uninvited. That morning they did. The first memory was of James, my husband. I could almost hear his laugh again, warm, deep, steady. He used to call me Sunshine, even when we barely had enough money for groceries. He'd walk in, soaked from work, still smiling, saying, We'll be all right, Sunshine, you and me and our little girl. Our little girl, Anna. God, she was the light of my life. When James died, she was only 8. A drunk driver took him one rainy night. I remember the sound of the police officer's knock on our door. I remember the way my knees gave out, and I remember how, even in that pain, I looked at Anna, her tiny face frozen with fear, and I told myself, I can't break, not in front of her. So I didn't. For years, I worked every job I could find, cleaning houses, serving food, mending clothes, anything that would keep the lights on and her dreams alive. There were nights I went to bed hungry so she could have enough for her lunchbox. But I never told her that. She didn't need to know. I remember once, she came home crying because a classmate said she didn't have nice clothes. I stayed up all night stitching her a new dress from scraps of old fabric. In the morning, when she saw it hanging on the chair, her face lit up. Did you buy this, Mommy? She asked. And I said yes, because I wanted her to feel special, even if it was just for a day. The rain outside grew heavier, the room filled with its rhythm, steady and sad. I thought about how those years had shaped us, her growing up, me growing older. I wanted her to fly, to have everything I never could. But I suppose in helping her build wings, I forgot to keep my own. Margaret came in quietly, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. She sat beside me and handed one over. "You're far away again," she said gently. I smiled faintly. "Just remembering. James? And Anna, mostly Anna." She nodded, waiting. I think she could feel the weight of what I hadn't said yet. "She was my reason to live," I whispered. "Everything I did, every sacrifice, it was for her. When she got her first job, I cried all night, not out of sadness, but pride. And when she got married, I thought, this is it. She's happy now. My work is done." My voice trembled. "But no one tells you that motherhood doesn't end. It just changes. And sometimes it hurts more when you're no longer needed." Margaret squeezed my hand. "You're still needed, Mary. She just doesn't realize it yet." I looked down at my hands, wrinkled, veined, tired. The same hands that once braided her hair, wiped her tears, signed school forms, packed lunches. Now they just trembled when I tried to hold a cup. "She shouted at me, Margaret," I said softly. "Over food, over something so small. But it wasn't just about food. It was about being unwanted, being in the way." Tears filled my eyes. I hadn't wanted to cry again, but sometimes pain doesn't ask permission. "I filled that fridge," I said, voice breaking. "I made every dish with love, thinking she'd be proud. But when she told me not to touch it, it felt like she was saying, 'Don't touch my life.'" Margaret didn't say anything. She just held me. And in that silence, I realized how heavy love can be when it's only carried on one side. When the rain finally stopped, the air felt clean, but my heart didn't. I walked to the window, watching water drip from the eaves. The street glistened under the gray sky, like the world was new again. But for me, time had stopped somewhere between the day James died and the day my daughter forgot who I was. I whispered to the rain, "If there's a heaven, I hope James is watching her. Maybe he can reach her heart in ways I can't anymore." And as I stood there, I made a quiet decision to write her a letter, not to accuse, not to beg, but to remind her of who I was, the mother who loved her more than life itself. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind kept brushing the curtains, whispering against the window as if the world itself wanted to speak. I sat at the little desk in Margaret's guest room with a single sheet of paper and my old pen. The ink trembled with my hand. I stared at the blank page for a long time. What do you write to a child who has forgotten your warmth, but not your name? Finally, I began. "My dearest Anna, I hope you're sleeping well tonight. Maybe you'll read this someday when the house is quiet and the only sound is the hum of the fridge we once filled together. I wanted to tell you that I love you. That has never changed, not through silence, not through distance, not even through the words that broke my heart. I know you didn't mean to hurt me. Life moves fast, and sometimes love gets lost between schedules and expectations. You wanted everything to be perfect for your husband's family. I understand. I truly do. But, my sweet girl, perfection is an empty plate when love is missing from the table. I remember the little girl who used to run to me after school, her arms full of drawings. You'd hand me a paper heart and say, 'This is for you, Mommy.' I kept every one. They're still in a small box in my drawer, wrinkled, colorful, alive. I never stopped being proud of you. Every success, every step forward, I carried those moments in my heart like sunlight. But the truth is, Anna, mothers grow old too. We slow down, we forget things, we talk too much sometimes. We don't mean to embarrass you, we just want to belong. When you told me not to touch the food, I heard something deeper. It felt like you were saying, 'Don't touch my world anymore.' Maybe that was true. Maybe you've built a life that no longer needs me. And that's okay, darling. That's what I raised you for, to stand tall without me. I only wish you'd remember that love isn't meant to be hidden out of shame. Love should be shared, loudly, proudly, like laughter in the kitchen. If someday you open the fridge and see a pie, or smell cinnamon, or hear rain on the window, think of me. Think of the woman who once stayed up late so your dreams could grow, who stitched your dress with tired hands, who prayed every night for your happiness. I forgive you, Anna. I forgive you because that's what mothers do. And I'll keep loving you, quietly, endlessly, from wherever I am. Mom. When I finished, I folded the letter carefully and placed it in an envelope. I wrote her address in my slow, shaky handwriting. For a long moment, I just stared at it. Part of me wanted to tear it apart, afraid she wouldn't read it, afraid she would. Then I slipped it into my bag. Margaret found me the next morning sitting on the porch, still in my nightgown, holding that letter like a fragile bird. "You should send it," she said softly. "I will," I whispered. "But not yet." We sat there together as the sun rose over the quiet street. The air smelled of wet earth and new beginnings. But for me, it felt like an ending. Gentle, peaceful, inevitable. Later that day, I walked to the post office. My legs trembled, but I made it there. I handed the letter to the clerk, and as it disappeared into the metal slot, I felt something leave with it. All the words I'd never been brave enough to say out loud. On the way back, I stopped by the park. Children were playing, their laughter echoing through the air. I sat on a bench beneath an oak tree, closed my eyes, and listened. It sounded like my Anna again, 8 years old, chasing butterflies, calling, "Mom, look." And for the first time in a long while, I smiled. Because even if she never answered that letter, even if she never understood, I had finally said everything my heart needed to say. The sky was pale when I woke up the next morning, soft silver light spilling through the curtains. My chest felt heavy, but calm. The kind of calm that comes when you've said everything that needed to be said. Margaret made breakfast, and we ate quietly together. She asked if I was feeling better. I smiled and said, "Yes, I think I finally found peace." After she left for errands, I went back to the porch with my old shawl wrapped around me. The autumn air was cool, but gentle. A few yellow leaves drifted down from the trees, landing softly on the steps. I watched them fall for a long time, thinking how much they looked like moments, small, beautiful, gone too soon. I closed my eyes and whispered, "It's time." And somewhere deep inside, I felt James waiting. That afternoon, Margaret came home to find me, sitting there, still and quiet, my hands folded in my lap, my face turned toward the sky. Peaceful, gone. She cried, of course, but she also smiled a little through her tears because she knew I had left the world with a full heart, finally unburdened. 3 days later, my letter reached Anna. She was in the kitchen, rushing around as always, when the mailman handed her the envelope. She recognized the handwriting instantly, that shaky, loving script she'd seen her whole life. "Mom," she whispered, a strange unease stirring in her chest. She sat down at the table, tore it open, and began to read. At first she smiled, then her eyes filled with tears, then she broke. Every word hit her like a wave. "I forgive you, Anna. Perfection is an empty plate when love is missing from the table. Think of me when you smell cinnamon." By the time she reached the last line, "I'll keep loving you, quietly, endlessly, from wherever I am." Her hands were shaking. "Wherever I am." Those 3 words made her stop breathing for a moment. She grabbed her phone, dialing Margaret's number, the only friend of her mother's she still remembered. When Margaret answered, her voice was soft. "Anna, I was going to call you. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Your mom passed peacefully 2 days ago." Anna didn't speak. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the fridge, that same fridge her mother had once filled with love. She walked toward it slowly, opened the door, and stared at the shelves. It was full. Her husband's family was coming that evening. But she couldn't stop crying, because suddenly all she could see were her mother's tired hands arranging food, smiling quietly, being told not to touch what she had made. She sank to the floor, clutching the letter to her chest, whispering through her sobs, "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it." Hours later, she took out a pie from the fridge, one her mother had baked months before and frozen for her favorite guests. She warmed it slowly, tears falling into the crust. The scent of cinnamon filled the house again. That night, when her husband's family arrived, they found her sitting at the table with a single candle burning, the letter beside her plate. She didn't say much, only one line through a trembling voice. "My mom made this for you. Please, have some." And for the first time in years, her home felt like her mother's again, full of warmth, love, and regret. Later, when everyone had left, Anna stepped outside. The wind was cool, carrying the smell of rain and cinnamon. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "I love you, Mom. I remember now." And somewhere beyond that quiet sky, a gentle spirit smiled,